Mr. President and members, I do have a proclamation and a celebration of the life of one of my heroes and one of Arizona's heroes, Jack Holder, who I mentioned a few weeks ago when he passed. So if we can kind of move from the celebratory tone of winning the softball game to celebrating the life of Joseph Jack Holder, if you would all stand.
Of course.
Whatever you do. Whereas today we remember and celebrate the life of Joseph Jack Holder, who passed away peacefully on February 24th, 2023 at Chandler in the age of 101 and was one of the last living survivors of the attack on Pearl Harbor. And whereas Jack was born in Gunter, Texas in 1921 and enlisted in the U.S. Navy at the age of 18, and after defending Ford Island from a makeshift machine gun pit, he flew in the battles of Midway, Guadalcanal, and the Solomon Islands in the Pacific Theater, and in defense of the English Channel and France in the European theater. And whereas Jack flew over 100 missions as a flight engineer on the PBY-5A Catalina and the B-24 Liberator, earning several honors including 2 Distinguished Flying Cross Medals, 6 Air Medals, a Presidential Citation, and 6 Commendation Medals in his Navy career before being honorably discharged in 1948. And whereas after the war, Jack continued his dream of flying for 25 years as a commercial pilot and began his lifelong love of golf, even becoming a professional golfer for a few years before retiring in Chandler, Arizona. And whereas for decades Jack did not discuss his wartime service, as many of the greatest generation did not, until his late 80s when he took an honor flight to visit the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., where he became inspired to help tell the story of Pearl Harbor and authored a memoir of his experiences entitled Fear, Adrenaline, and Excitement. And whereas Jack became a passionate mentor and an avid World War II educator, giving firsthand accounts of history to younger generations as a frequent speaker well into his 100th year at schools, museums, and commemorative events across the nation. Now, therefore, the Arizona Senate mourns the passing of Jack Holder, honors his life and service, extends our heartfelt condolences to his family and friends, and proclaims this day as Jack Holder Day, signed this 12th day of April 2023, signed by Warren Peterson, President of the Senate, and myself, Senator from LD1. And I know we don't have a formal motion. This is not a concurrent resolution in the formalist sense, but if we could, I'd like to all stand and acknowledge and honor a moment of silence for Jack Holder. Thank you.
The Senate will stand for a moment of silence.
A few more comments, if I could, Mr. President, about Jack, and just wanted to make sure that everyone is invited to his funeral service, which will be Friday in Chandler. I will make sure that my assistant sends to all of you those plans. His remains will be honorably interred in Washington, D.C., and will receive the full honors that he deserved. Jack was a teeny tiny little guy. Couldn't have stood about 5'2". Probably weighed 105 pounds dripping wet. But he was one of my heroes, and he was one of Arizona's finest. And if you're a golfer, you understand what it takes to shoot your age in golf. And Jack has been doing that for approximately 30 years. For 30 years of his life, he could shoot his age in golf, which means that when you were 70, you could shoot a 70. That's 2 under par. And when he was 100, I played golf with Jack when he was 96 years old, and he shot like an 84. But the real hero of Jack was his service to our country. On one of those golf outings, I mentioned that he was a flight engineer on the PBYs. I think his humility kept him from just coming right out and saying it. But if you've ever watched the movie Midway, you will know that what turned that battle, which then turned the war, was our PBYs finding their aircraft carriers before their scout planes found ours. And from some comments that Jack made to me on the golf course one day, I am personally convinced, and will take it to my grave, that he was on the PBY that found the Japanese carriers. And he played that critical of a role. Obviously, he didn't feel much like a pilot when on Ford Island. He was about 100 yards away from the first Japanese bomb that went into a hangar and exploded. He jumped into a ditch. He said the Japanese Zero that was strafing him got so close that he could see the eyes of the Japanese pilot as he went by. And he spent 3 days in that ditch where they made a makeshift machine gun pit, fought against the Japanese during that day, but they were all really expecting an invasion the next day or whatever. And so for 3 days he stayed in that pit and guarded his post, and then went on to, as I said, fly in the battles of Midway, Guadalcanal, and Solomon Islands, and then retrained on B-24 Liberators and saw service in the European theater. And hope you'll all, if you have a moment, will come to the service on Friday. I will present this proclamation as part of the service, and I just stand in honor of my friend and hero, Jack Holder. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bennett. Appreciate it.